Welcome back to Humble Running. Today I'm bringing my full talking head review of the all new, or sort of new, Norda 001A. There's one big change in this shoe that we'll talk about. A lot of things that are unchanged, pretty similar to the current 001 or the no longer for sale 001. You'll also notice I do have a couple of other models on the table. The 002 here, same outsole as the 001, and of course the Norda 005. So it will be a little bit of a comparison. Check out an earlier review I have on the channel, linked down below in the description. I have a full 001, 002, 005 fit, sizing, a little bit of feel breakdown there. Also check out my last video. I was again up in the Sawtooth Wilderness this past weekend, got a chance to do some big mountain runs, and luckily the 001A did show up the day before I left on that trip. Actually, it was the day that I left for the trip, so good chance to get this out on a legitimate 21-mile mountain run. I got a little zen in that video, as one commenter put it. No talking, no music, just straight wilderness adventure, point of view on the run kind of thing. I don't know. I thought it would just be kind of interesting to show, my experience on the run with this 001. It's a wonderful, amazing, beautiful, scenic place to run out there in the Sawtooth. So I just thought I'd share that with you. And another reason was I lost my microphone the day before. So I didn't want to go on blabbing and blabbing away and then have the audio sound horrific and just be a big mess and a waste of time, essentially. So I'm going to give you my full thoughts right now on the shoe, full review. Full disclosure, this review of the 001A is strictly based on that 21-mile long run. There's really not much changed from the 001 throughout the most of the shoe. The midsole is new, and we will talk about that. But other than that, I don't feel like I need to go through a full, say, 50-mile test period to go through my thoughts on the run here. I think if you go back and check out that 21-mile long run, you'll see the terrain that I covered in that run. Pretty much a mix of everything, including full wet testing, climbing, descending, technical, rocky, boulder descents and climbs. That video, by the way, it was sunset kind of. So I took all the clips on my way up to Barren Lake, but then my battery was kind of dying and the sun was kind of fading anyway, so I didn't have good light. So everything that I ran up, everything that you see in that video, I also ran back down. It was an out and back. So to give you a sense of the kind of rockiness and technical terrain, you can see me climbing in that video. I also did go down in that video. So my full thoughts will be based, on covering all that terrain. Quick look at the specs here. 001A, I measure this at 10.6 ounces, 300 grams. There was some talk about this shoe possibly losing some weight compared to the 001 model, the original model right here. Now, I have this one measured at 10.5 ounces. That's rounded from a measurement of 298 grams. So I actually measure this shoe 2 grams heavier than the 001. I don't think Norda explicitly said that this was a lighter shoe. They mentioned that the big feature update in this shoe is blending some of that Arnitel TPEE into this midsole rather than having it be the full EVA-based Vibram. They do mention that there is a 10% weight savings, and I think that is for the midsole itself, not necessarily for the shoe as a whole. Now, you might say, what else has changed? And I have inspected the shoe very carefully, and I don't notice anything really that has changed. Any other elements? The outsole is exactly the same. The upper seems to be the same. The fit and materials, construction along the interior, the heel area is one area I definitely looked at very closely. Everything seems exactly the same, including the laces. One thing that I did measure is the ground platform, and I looked at this very closely because I take my calipers and I measure the forefoot, midfoot, and heel. Typically on all my shoes, I put that down in my chart, and I went back and I noticed that it was a little bit off from my measurements from the 001. Now, sometimes depending on where you hit the calipers, I'm within some tolerance of error where I'm measuring across shoes and at different times. So I did actually take the 001 out and remeasure them. And I get, for this one, I wrote down 116, 72, 86 here for a platform on the ground. Now, with the original 001, these are both US size 10s, by the way. I got 113, 71, 84. So I got 3 millimeters wider at the forefoot, 1 millimeter wider at the midfoot, and 2 millimeter wider at the heel here. I was doing this side by side with these. I was checking these numbers, and I did remeasure very carefully. Putting them side by side, of course, it's just, it's really a hair, like 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters. And I measured and remeasured, and that was something I just definitely did notice. So a touch of extra width. I don't know if going with a new midsole design here, if they had to make new molds or something like that. If you check out this midsole, so this is a Vibram EVA based midsole here. Pretty firm ride. It's, you know, they have the ETPU, the insole here. Insole is the same between both models. I really like this insole, by the way. I actually swap it into other shoes, non-Norda shoes even. I like these kind of grooves in here. It gives a good amount of flex. Sometimes these beaded TPU insoles, they're great, but they could add a little bit of elasticity and make a shoe less flexible than with one of the maybe cheaper EVA insoles or something that's super thin that comes with a shoe. This is quite a good amount of thickness here, so you have to make sure you can fit that if you're swapping it into another shoe. But I like these grooves here. Anyway, the insoles between these two models are exactly the same. I inspected them carefully here. But this is the Vibram EVA midsole. You could see Vibram right here on the midsole. With the 001A, it says Norda. So there's, I guess there's no, I don't know how it works if they're not using Vibram EVA in here. Maybe it's still Vibram based EVA or some other type of EVA blended with the new Arnitel TPEE. They took the Arnitel TPEE, this is 100% Arnitel TPEE in the Norda 005. They blended that with an EVA in the 001A, and purportedly it gives you 30% increase in energy return. As I was saying, it does say Norda here on the midsole across here, where previously it was Vibram. So that may be something, maybe they created new molds for this midsole. This is pure speculation, by the way. So again, I did measure this like a hair, like 1 or 2 millimeters wider. So it's possible that they needed new midsole molds for the new kind of foam setup. Certainly could be indicated by having this Norda lettering here as opposed to Vibram here. I don't know how it works with midsole molds, that is. If you want to change the lettering on it or something like that, if you need to create a whole new thing. I don't really know how that works. I don't have any inside information, but again, I do measure this slightly wider, so it is possible that even though this shoe is a minuscule 2 grams heavier than my 001, again, there's a lot of, you know, manufacturing discrepancies. A lot of times I've heard, sometimes I get shoes in for test and the left and the right shoes are really far off, and that's kind of a good way to tell a company's manufacturing process. I noticed that a lot, pretty much is non-existent with Norda. Shoes of higher quality, something like even On shoes, sometimes they're like exact to the gram from the left to the right. Other brands, they could be way off, and I've heard that that could come down to the glue. When you're gluing the midsole down to the upper or the layers in between or whatever, somebody could just throw a heavier layer of glue on one shoe or the other, or say from one production period to another production period. So there are manufacturing variances. That's part of the reason, but the summary is this shoe comes in slightly heavier, even though they're claiming it's 10 ounces lighter. But again, with that measurement, I do measure it being a touch wider, and that could, we're only talking 2 grams here. So it could be the case that the foam itself is actually 10% lighter. You know, the ratio of the foam to the entire weight of all the materials, when you factor in the additional maybe 1 to 2 to even 3 at the forefoot millimeters of width, The midsole could actually be lighter than this one, but you know, with the added width, it could come out 2 grams heavier. Anyway, on the run, I noticed that this midsole, it seemed to be more responsive. I think there was a clear difference. I really like this shoe here in general, the 001. Take a look. I did I think a 2.5 hour long run here in the Boise foothills, heat of the summer in this shoe, and I really like the fit of this shoe. I think it's the most secure fit of these 3 models here. The 002 is certainly quite wide and spacious. I have to size up even more, a US 10.5 in this model compared to a 10 here. I have my 00510. It's also kind of high volume in this shoe. I think out of the 3 models, this has the most, I would say, shapely and dialed fit around the ball of the foot, and probably a little bit slight taper in the front. It just gives me an overall secure fit, the most secure, I would say, out of the 3 models that I have on the table here. So with that firmer ride of this shoe, I thought it's just noticeably kind of in between the 005 and the 002. This shoe feels quite thin underfoot, a lot of ground feel. Like I notice under the ball of my foot, especially below the big toe, I can feel the ground a lot in this 002. It's actually, this is, to be honest, my least favorite of the shoe because of that ground feel. It just feels a little bit too minimal for me. 005 is definitely different. There's more cushion in this one. I've got this one at 34.27 as my measured stack. Their specs may be a little bit different, but I take the calipers or my little combination square setup here and I measure here. So I get 34 and they give a 7 mil drop. This full Arnitel is a softer feel for sure than even this blend. They say 30% energy return. I don't think I saw an exact spec on how much Arnitel is blended in. I don't know if that would really give you any insight, but the feeling of this shoe is a lot closer to the 001. And if you didn't have these two side by side, you know, it may be difficult to discern the difference. Putting these 2 shoes on side by side, for sure you can tell the difference. This is softer, bouncier. The 100% TPEE here is just noticeably cushier and bouncy and just overall softer on the bottom of the foot. So clear difference between these 2 models here. If you had to say look at a cushion range here, this would clearly be, I would say, noticeably more responsive, noticeably but not hugely more responsive than this one. I would say having these 2 shoes on side by side, I do notice the enhanced, I would say, softness, a little bit of responsiveness on the run. That was 21 miles and I felt pretty comfortable. My feet were completely fine by the end of that run. With this shoe, I feel like sometimes it could feel a little bit firm. You know, the TPU insole in here does kind of dampen the kind of firmness of the regular EVA midsole here, but it's generally leans more protective. Both shoes have 5 mil lugs here, so I think that's great. Out of all these shoes on the table here, the 001/001A models are definitely going to be the most protective. This one, as I mentioned, is thinner underfoot. It has the same exact outsole here, 5 mil lugs, but there's just so much less, especially under the forefoot. I just feel the ground way more in this shoe and find it much less protective. This one, although it has a higher stack, 34.27, the 001, by the way, comes in, I measured at 31.26. They spec 26.21 for both of these models. So the stack is unchanged, okay? They spec 26.21, 5 mil drop, and I measure 31.26. So it comes in 3 mil less at the heel than this one. But this shoe being so cushioned and so soft and just really extremely flexible, I feel like stuff pushes through this shoe easily. I think you need to have quite strong feet to run in the shoe, especially for ultra distances. They're kind of, I would say, flagship runner. Anna Tarasova just did very well at UTMB or CCC. I think she did CCC in this shoe. you have to have strong feet for this shoe. I've been kind of toying around before River of No Return 108K. I was really strongly considering this shoe. I ended up going with the Cloud Ultra Pro just because with all my shoe testing, I feel like I don't have time to just run in this shoe all the time and be comfortable with such a flexible shoe underfoot where, especially in technical terrain, stuff is really, you know, not sharp hits getting through, but just all of that variation and, you know, pushing up to the bottom of your foot. It does, over the course of a long ultra, it does get to you. So I'm just a little hesitant personally about running this shoe for an ultra distance. This shoe feels definitely more protective. This 5 mil, there's way more lugs in the 001 shoe here. And of course, with it not being full TPEE, it's not as soft as this shoe, not as compliant underfoot. It's still a very flexible shoe, but I just feel like this really absorbs more from getting through. Like, stuff could push through the bottom of this shoe, even though it's 3 millimeters higher. This shoe will flex a little bit more underfoot than here. It just feels like even the raised 5 mil lugs and the amount of them, like here you notice there's big gaps. Something hits here and you're not really getting any extra protection from the lugs if you hit these big huge gaps in between the lugs with a rock. Here you have you have 5 mil lugs to start, plus you have full coverage rubber, obviously, and then you have these kind of like wavy things in between, so there's always a higher chance of hitting something where you're going to take advantage of that extra 5 mil underfoot, plus the foam itself is just overall not as soft and flexy as this shoe. I think this is surely the most protective of it. So on the run, I think, yeah, the reactivity is definitely an improvement. It seems like it's kind of a no-brainer for them to upgrade to this one. And also, I noticed they do not sell the regular 001 on their website anymore. They did have an archive sale. I think there were some other discounts previous, so people were a little bit speculating what's going to go on. Anyway, they came out with this shoe here. So this one is no longer for sale. There's really, I would say, no reason to kind of favor the 001 over this shoe unless, you know, you can get it on a pretty good discount from some other site. I'm not really sure what else is in stock as far as the older 001. Like, this shoe is still $295. So if you can get it, I think they were selling for $185 or $200. These are still not cheap shoes, even on a deep discount. But if you're a fan of the 001 and you've really liked it, I think you're going to get enhanced rebound. It feels nice on the run. Like, my feet felt really fresh, especially in the second half of that 21 miler. So we're talking 10, 11 miles running down all of that terrain that I was running up in that you saw in the video. And my feet felt totally fine. I did not have any foot fatigue, impact, soreness by the end of 21 miles. And that was straight out of the box. I took this shoe from my house, drove up to the Sawtooth, and I was running them. And I had actually, that was the second day, I had run in the Fuga EX Pro 22.5 miles the day before. So I went and ran 21 miles in this one, back-to-back long run, and had no foot soreness or fatigue. So I think that just demonstrates the protective aspect of this shoe, and also just I think the foam is better. Like, with the firmer feel, I feel like that is more, it does allow more impact to get to your foot. It is a little bit more fatiguing to have a slightly firmer, standard-ish EVA midsole. So I think you are getting, certainly the ride felt a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more responsive, and I think there's also a little bit of an element of protection with this new midsole here. So taking a quick look around at the other elements of the shoe, again, like I said, it is very similar. It is probably exactly the same as these two. I cannot tell a difference between these two upper materials and the elements at all. Obviously, some are very curious about the heel area right here. I mean, this is definitely the probably sore spot of this shoe. I mean, people have issues with this. There's no padding in here. There's a couple of little bolsters along the interior here, but around here, this is really the problematic area. And I closely inspected these two shoes here, and really, there's really nothing to put between the heel Achilles padding of this shoe here. Now, I guess I could say that's a little bit disappointing that this shoe has been out for quite some time, and they really didn't do anything to address that. I ran 21 miles in this shoe. I had that long run where I ran in this shoe. I have not had irritation in. So I would just say that I'm one of the lucky ones with this. I've heard personally, not just through comments, like people that I know in real life have said, oh, they just love this shoe or the 001 here. But this thing, if they could just fit, it just grates on their Achilles. Now, I've been told by Norda, maybe try, if you're wearing wool socks, anything that generates heat is gonna kind of exacerbate any issues that you have in here. Yes, that can help, I guess, if you're wearing smart wool socks or any other type of thick wool sock that may generate heat and more friction, that's gonna cause more issues. But I just think this is objectively gonna hit more runners the wrong way, as opposed to just a regular kind of padded cushion that you see here kind of in the 002. Even the 005, they've definitely improved this here. It's a lot softer. There's not, this one just seems to, it's a more rigid material, and it seems to angle back towards the foot. So if you're curious if there's any change in this area from the 001, no, there is not. I did not have any issues, but it does concern me. I don't particularly see this as a, say, long distance ultra shoe. For me personally, if you are 100% comfortable in this shoe and 100% comfortable with this heel, this can absolutely be a long distance ultra shoe. I just kind of, I feel this hitting the back of my Achilles at times. So it does give me a little bit pause. It didn't get me over 4 hours, 21 miles in that run. No blister, no irritation, but at times I could just feel it up against. So that gives me a little bit of worry over the course of something even longer than, say, 4 hours. In the world of ultra racing, 4 hours, that could be on the shorter end. Another aspect is, you know, this is quite loose. You know, this is not a sealed ankle and heel collar by any means. So stuff does have more potential to get in here. And again, if you're worried about irritation here with stuff getting in, that could potentially be an issue. I've never seen actually images of anybody wearing gaiters with this shoe. That can certainly, you could probably stick a Velcro on here, as I've done in the past. If you want to add a gaiter, that would be the route you want to go. I think, I don't know, people just maybe like the look of the shoe and don't want to kind of mess it up by throwing a gaiter on top of it. Another aspect that I do have to mention is this shoe holds water. Absolutely. I went through some creek crossings early in that run, and I was running, and you can just tell when a shoe is just like holding water and squishing it around. It felt like it wasn't evacuating quickly at all. I just felt I was running for quite a long time with water kind of like squishing around inside of the shoe. So that was definitely an issue for me. I even pulled over and had to look. I was, you saw me tilting it out. I was half expecting water to pour out of the shoe, but it was really just being held in there and just held into my sock. So I actually picked my foot up, and you can see I was just wringing out the sock as it was on my foot, and there was just a ton of water. And that was after kind of a fair bit of time waiting for it to drain out. You have this Dyneema upper here, and it's a closed mesh. Okay, so I'm just feeling through this upper layer here. So there's an upper layer right here. Try the air test. It's not easy to blow air through, so it's definitely quite sealed. And then you have this tongue here. It's not just gusseted on the sides. If you look in there, it's not just a strip of gusset. it's an actual interior liner that extends fully through the toe box. So you have a tongue that's connected through a full liner that extends through the entire toe box. You don't just have strips of a tongue gusset here. So that is clearly going to be an element that holds water and doesn't allow water to kind of migrate its way out as easy. Actually, breathability, I didn't notice to be too bad. There's definitely a lot of layers on here, and I've heard from other runners that they find it to be not an overly breathable shoe. I have more problems with the 002 for sure. This shoe, if I even put this shoe on casually, this one actually has gussets. It doesn't have the full kind of liner on the inside. This has the kind of strip gussets on here, but this material just seems more plasticky. Like if I wear this around town, I notice my feet feeling hot without even running in this shoe. So I would say this is for sure the least breathable. Most breathable is the 005 here. This has a weave mesh here, and it just seems to allow the air to escape much more easily, even though it's not an open mesh. So most breathable, least breathable. For me, this one hits kind of in the middle, but I have not, when I ran this shoe, I did not test this. I did not get the opportunity to test it so much in full creek water soakings as I did with this shoe up in the Sawtooths, and that was a definitive downside to the shoe. If your feet are going to be wet or they're going to be soaked, certainly going through ankle deep creek crossings and stuff like that, in and out, it does not evacuate water quickly. That is definitely a negative to this shoe. So something to keep in mind there. They do have, in terms of style, they have already 7 colorways of this shoe. I've got the white gum model here. You know, I get some commentary about light colored trail shoes. I love light colored trail shoes. I love the color of the 005. White gum, this is not like a off-white or anything like, certainly not at this stage, but it's not an off-white. When you get these, it's like, you know, when you go to the paint shop and they have those little samples, they have eggshell white, they have, I don't know what, cream white, beige, this kind of thing. This is like an ultra pure white when you get this shoe. But I have personally styled this one on the trails, and I do like this color. I mean, what better proof that you are an official trail runner than having a white shoe that looks like this? So personally, I love this style, white gum. I think I saw a color, calcite. If I had to pick out of the 7, that one looks pretty awesome. That would be my pick in terms of style. So I think that's a wrap on the 001A review. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you have the 001, do you love it? Are you disappointed that there's not more updates with the shoe? I mean, I think the midsole is absolutely 100% an improvement. So as a one-to-one upgrade from here to there, all things being equal, this is definitely a better shoe for me. Do you have the 001 already? What do you think of that midsole? Do you agree with me? Do you think it's an improvement? Are you kind of disappointed that they didn't do something with the heel here? Let me know down in the comments. If there's any shoe you like to see for comparisons. Again, this is not a new shoe. My thoughts here are based on that 21-mile test run, which I feel like I did cover a lot of ground and a lot of varied terrain in, so clearly feel like I have a good handle on this shoe between running that one long run and also having this shoe for quite some time now. If you'd like to see any comparisons or just hear generally what I think about this shoe, the midsole foam, the TPEE, maybe compared to other TPEE midsole foams in other models or brands, let me know down in the comments. Check out www.humblerunning.com. Go to thefeed.com. That is a new partnership that I have. You can get 10% off with my discount code. I have a bunch of stuff on the way as I start fueling and hydration with some new stuff that I get through that partnership. I'll be sharing that with you. But again, you can get that 10% off anytime. I have the link in the description, and the link will always be on my support page on www.humblerunning.com. I also have affiliate links there, promo codes that I get. So if you're ever wondering, you've watched my videos, oh, where do I get that code? Or I want to get that 10%, where's the link? Go to the website, check out the support page. I have my disclaimers there, affiliate links, promo codes, discount codes, all that kind of stuff. So Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next On the Run review. I don't really like sitting here at the table here doing this kind of talking head stuff. Thank you for watching though.